Hello and welcome back to my humble show. So I'm just going to be dunking on Kamala Harris for a few minutes, because why not? And also because she's currently on her book-selling media blitz, talking about her new book titled 107 Days. Obviously, it's about her failed 2024 presidential campaign, which was short-lived and went nowhere fast. One might wonder whether or not she will be using this book an attempt to catapult herself back into the White House in 2028, or shall I say 2029, this time as the president instead of the vice president, of course. I'm not so sure what her motivation is. It's typical to try to sell a book in times such as these if you're a politician, but let me know what you think down in the comments below. Be happy to hear from you, even if you disagree with me. I have a few things to go through here. Thoughts from today, thoughts from days past. One thing is clear if you ask me. She has not learned much of a lesson about anything, judging by her appearances on various talk shows such as The View. She seems to believe, or at least she's claiming to believe, that if she had only had more time, she would have won the election. So that's exactly what I'm going to be dunking on her for. And let me start with my thoughts in regards to her most recent statements about this. I put together this post, posted it earlier on X. Kamala Harris on why she lost the election. We just didn't have enough time. All right. So after I read through this post, I have some old posts which I would like to read for you. Thoughts from before the election, thoughts from after the election, thoughts from in between. Let's see how consistent I have been in my calculations about her campaigning and about the ultimate trajectory of that particular train wreck. All right, so here's the latest. Is it possible that two-time failed presidential candidate Kamala Harris is attempting to kill two birds with one stone by publishing a book titled 107 Days and claiming that she didn't win the 2024 election because she didn't have enough time? I mean, on the one hand, it's her excuse for losing, and on the other, it could be her preemptively saying, vote for me next time around because I'll have more time to campaign in 2028. Either way, this book-selling campaign is a sign of either her lack of awareness or her lack of authenticity, considering how she literally became less popular as more time went by in both her 2020 campaign and her 2024 campaign. In her plan B of a 2024 candidacy, she was most popular immediately after the Democrat establishment had pushed President Joe Biden out of the race, when the party rallied around her and she was momentarily seen as a fresh face by the voting population. She waited as long as possible to say much of anything, then failed to have much of anything to say. She could neither sell her own Biden-Harris administration nor separate herself from it, because she's a former prosecutor turned empty pantsuit politician pushing platitudes in an attempt to pull everyone's legs. If she actually believes her own word salads and spin on the historical nature of her almost successful presidential campaign, I definitely wouldn't put it past her to run again. But I have a hard time seeing enough redeeming qualities in her for her to pull off some kind of great American comeback. Eating no for breakfast just isn't going to cut it when talking about it makes so many people want to lose their lunch, if you know what I mean. So I've put together this compilation of clips, primarily from her recent appearance on The View, in which she argued that she lost because she didn't have enough time to win. But before I play this, I want to pull up some old posts of mine, starting with this one, which I posted June 28 of last year, before Joe Biden had dropped out of the race yet. So this was when his own people started to throw him under the bus. And the New York Times in this case with the headline, "To serve his country, President Joe Biden should leave the race." Whoa. So what I said at that time was, this kind of publicity means Joe Biden is cooked. Can't come back from this. The media have so much power, and they don't typically turn against their own like this. The problem is, Kamala Harris is ineffective and popular primarily among a small demographic of people who view her as the superhero she views herself as. Gavin Newsom has said Biden will still be fit to defeat Trump at 100. Plus, if he leapfrogs Kamala, he's stealing the spotlight from the first black female VP ever. Michelle Obama has already said she isn't interested, and Gretchen Whitmer will just get kidnapped. That last one is a joke. Decisions. So, all of my speculations at that time turned out to be quite accurate. What else did I have to say? Later on, 1 month later, July 23 of last year, I said, I feel like Kamala Harris could potentially become a threat to Donald Trump's chances at winning the election because she's essentially the pathetically perfect token ticket of the Democrats in the face of every controversial take on Trump. So she wanted to run as everything he wasn't. And the problem is she just ran into a wall. It's not even necessarily that Donald Trump was that wall, though he was a bit of a wall for her. She hit walls on her own. So moving on. A month after that post, I posted on September 13 of last year, of course, saying, after hearing Kamala Harris struggle to answer basic questions in today's interview, once she finally started doing interviews, I don't see how she can possibly win the election. She is horrible. She should have stuck with being a prosecutor, because if you go and listen to her interviews from a dozen plus years ago, at least she seemed passionate about what she was saying. Now, not only is she relying solely upon canned talking points, but she lacks the ability to even pull off the performatism, thus the fact that this is only her second interview in 2 months. The inauthenticity is clear to see, as is the lack of depth. How are people going to buy it if she can't even sell it? She couldn't give a single compelling answer in this interview, and that's just horrendous for someone who is literally serving as the vice president as we speak, supposedly because of her endless qualifications. And moving on, a month after that post, I posted in October, on the 14th to be exact. Again, from last year, I said, Kamala Harris is taking another big step to spin a strategic narrative of availability just before the election, now that the liberal media's second-hand high from her own joyous farts has worn off, and she feels she must convince everyone that Donald Trump has been the one in hiding. I have no problem with Bret Baier, so I'm interested to see how this Fox News interview goes. So yes, this was just before she went on with Bret Baier in her embarrassing interview there. Basically, I was speaking to the fact that she went into hiding for the longest time until the high from her joyous farts, as I put it, wore off. And even the liberal media began to ask her questions, or at least seek the opportunity to ask her questions. She was forced to start doing various media appearances. Those weren't going so well, even though they weren't challenging to say the least. So finally, her one challenging moment arrived. An interview on Fox News. The toughest interview during her time campaigning. And she was, during that time, trying to spin the narrative to convince people that Donald Trump was the one who had been hiding. Of course, that was the furthest thing from the truth in comparison to her cowardice campaigning. But nevertheless, that's the narrative she wanted to spin in the final days of her campaign. So, moving forward, a month later, as she was losing the election. Safe to say everyone except for Kamala Harris is now unburdened by what has been. Then again, she was so unprepared to be president, she might actually feel relieved to have lost. I mean, she doesn't even have to worry about running ever again, since it would be pointless for her to do so. First, she ran as an aspiring activist, and didn't even make it past the primaries. Then she was forced to run as a pretend populist, and got completely derailed by the Trump train. So what could she even run on next time around? With so much support from celebrities, I'd say she could call her campaign the Celebrity Apprenticeship, but that title is already taken, essentially. Plus, she'd be the only one who'd get fired. Again, what say you? Who's more likely to run for president in 2028? Kamala Harris or a paraplegic? Well, she might actually be running. I don't personally feel that it will go well for her. If she does, I could be wrong about that. Wouldn't be the first time I've been wrong, but so far, in regards to her, I've been exactly right. Not to toot my own horn. I think she's pretty easy to make predictions about, at least in terms of her success rate, or lack thereof. But yeah, after she lost the election, I thought to myself, she's cooked, just like Joe Biden was cooked. Time has gone by, and copies of her book have been flying off the shelf to one extent or another, right? And maybe, just maybe, she will throw her hat in the ring yet again. A month after that, I said this in response to Time magazine considering her for their Person of the Year. So yes, who will be Time's Person of the Year for 2024? See the short list. This was in December of last year, December 9 to be exact. So when that question was being considered by Time magazine, I said the following. So, Time magazine has apparently placed failed presidential candidate Kamala Harris on their shortlist for their supposedly coveted Times Person of the Year title. Why exactly? I mean, she was merely a desperately undemocratic backup plan who was improperly installed in the wake of an increasingly catastrophic Biden campaign, which she herself was an underwhelming member of. She was chosen to be Sleepy Joe Biden's VP more as a token than as an actual talent in the first place. See her woke 2020 dumpster fire of a presidential campaign. And therefore she was quite literally a 2024 election loss waiting to happen. She ran on a baseless imbalance of good vibes and bad energy, and she ran her party directly into the dirt. No amount of joy manufacturing, fear-mongering, clout-chasing, challenge-ducking, selective editing, and paid celebrity endorsements could change that fact. So again, why is she on this list? Or on any complimentary list at all, for that matter? The only thing remarkable about her 107-day presidential campaign was the rate at which she lost appeal by opening her mouth after refusing to answer any tough questions for most of 2 months. She's simply not fit to be the future of the party. She lacks the leadership qualities required in the legacy which has been projected onto her. And then I added, the trajectory of the 2024 presidential election as seen in Time magazine covers. Like it or not, Donald Trump came back. Kamala Harris crumbled. Starting with this, Joe Biden headed out. Kamala Harris headed in due to the panic following his debate performance. Then, her moment. The time for her to shine came and went. Though for a time, it appeared that Donald Trump was the one who was in trouble, as seen here in this image. Ultimately, Donald Trump won. President-elect Donald Trump. Trump Vance. Doing the dance. And here's one more old post before I return to today's post. I said, late December of last year, if Kamala Harris grew less effective as her campaign grew longer, what makes anyone think an even longer campaign will benefit her? And that question remains on my mind, even at this time. So here's the compilation of clips, which I referenced earlier. I'll go ahead and play this out on this note.
Welcome back. Former Vice President Kamala Harris is taking you inside her last-minute presidential campaign in the new memoir, 107 Days. Please welcome Kamala Harris.
So, I mean, it was a very tight race, but ultimately, if you have to pin it down to one thing, what was the primary reason, do you think, that you lost?
There are many factors, I think, that played into the outcome of that election. But I think probably one of the biggest in my mind is we just didn't have enough time.
You didn't have enough
time. We didn't have enough time.
Oh, yeah.
By the way, let me read that. Harris declined repeated requests for an interview for this story. Notice Time magazine. In contrast, Trump talked about his policy vision with a Time reporter for 90 minutes across 2 interviews. Even Biden spoke to Time at a similar length before dropping out of the race. So yeah, during this time, Kamala Harris was declining opportunities such as these while doing photo shoots such as this with Vogue, the candidate for our times. Sorry, my cat is really pestering me right now. Catastrophic, like Kamala's campaign.
She could have had 701 days and would have still lost that race.
107 days, way too many for anybody, but including her.
Right.
But the more they got to know her, the less they liked her.
And, you know, I mean, one of the reasons I wrote the book is this is unprecedented. So I wrote this book. So one of the things about the election, 107 days, is it really is unprecedented. Think about this.
Yeah.
That there's a race for president of the United States. The current sitting president is running for re-election. 3.5 months from the election, he decides not to run. So think about it. The seated president of the United States is running for re-election with 3.5 months to go, and then decides not to continue running. The sitting vice president then takes the mantle, running against a former president of the United States who had been running for 10 years with 107 days until the election. The seated vice president then steps in against a former president of the United States who had been running for 10 years with 107 days to get it done. And by the way, another piece of what is unprecedented and a bit historical about that race, it is the closest presidential race in the 21st century in terms of the outcome. And by the way, what is also historic about that in many ways, it was the closest election for president of the United States in the 21st century.
Talk about tooting your own horn.
The closest.
You know, say that again, because he likes to say over and over again he's got a mandate.
And that's part of why I wrote this book, because history will talk about this race. It is part of American history. And it was important to me that when history is written, that my voice be present about what that experience is.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
And then, you know, I guess my last point is this. You got to fight fire with fire. And you know,
Will you run again?
And so
Will you run again?
going
Will
forward,
you run
that's
again?
what-
You like to run again?
that's not in my immediate
Not
focus.
right.
I'm doing my book tour, and please everybody
That's
come
right.
out. I'm going to a lot of cities.
Oh.
Guess I'm doing my book tour. And please, everybody,
That's
come
right.
out. I'm going to a lot of cities.
But maybe, just maybe, she's trying to rack up some presidential points for the next run. Will be fun for me, but I wouldn't recommend it for her. All right. I spent enough time on this. That compilation is up on my Articulate Thinker News Clips channel if you want to rewatch it over there. My cat wants me to stop recording, so guess I'm going to let the cat make the rules. Say hello, Birdie. Her name's Birdie because she chirps a lot. Peace.